I want to tell you about a patient of mine. Her name is Dorothy. Dorothy is 71 years old, and she came to see me 14 months ago because her annual blood work had come back with something concerning. Her fasting blood glucose was 118. Her HbA1c was 6.1%. Both of those numbers put her firmly in the pre-diabetic range. And her previous doctor had told her to watch what she eats and to come back in 6 months. Dorothy was confused and honestly, a little frightened because she told me, Dr. Chen, I eat the same breakfast every single morning, the same one I have eaten for 30 years. And I thought it was healthy. Everyone says it is healthy. My whole life, people have told me this is a good breakfast. And I said, Dorothy, tell me what you eat. And she told me, and I nodded because I had heard it before many times from patients sitting in that same chair with that same confused expression on their faces. She told me she eats a bowl of cereal every morning with low-fat milk, a glass of orange juice, and sometimes a piece of whole wheat toast. And I want you to hear what I told Dorothy that morning, because what I told her is what I want to tell you today. I am Dr. Daniel Chen, and today I want to explain why the breakfast that Dorothy had been eating for 30 years that was marketed to her as healthy was silently, every single morning, pushing her blood sugar higher than it should go. And why after 60, the foods that seem like the safest breakfast choices are very often the ones doing the most damage to blood sugar in the hours after you eat them. Now, before I explain what happened with Dorothy, I want to give you the context that makes this make sense. Because understanding what happens to blood sugar after 60 is essential to understanding why certain foods that were manageable at 40 become genuinely problematic at 65 or 70, after 60. And I discuss this in detail in my video on cinnamon water and blood sugar. The body's ability to manage blood sugar after a meal changes significantly. Insulin resistance increases. The cells of the body, particularly muscle cells, become less responsive to the insulin signal. The first phase insulin response, the rapid burst of insulin that normally blunts the peak of a blood sugar rise immediately after eating, becomes slower and smaller. And the incretin hormones that amplify the insulin response and slow gastric emptying after a meal become less active. Together, these three changes mean that the same meal that produced a manageable blood sugar response in a 45-year-old body can produce a significantly higher and longer-lasting blood sugar spike in a 70-year-old body, eating identical food at identical amounts. Now, add to this the specific foods that most seniors have been told are healthy breakfast choices. And you have a situation that I see playing out in my clinic every single week. Let me explain what Dorothy was eating and what each part of that breakfast was doing to her blood sugar every morning for 30 years, starting with the cereal. The cereal Dorothy ate was a well-known brand that has been marketed for decades as heart healthy. As part of a balanced breakfast with images of active older adults on the packaging and a health claim on the box about fiber and heart health. It was a whole grain cereal in flake form with some dried fruit added. And Dorothy had chosen it because it seemed like the responsible choice. Here is what that cereal was actually doing to her blood sugar every single morning. When you eat processed cereal, even whole grain cereal, in flake or puff form, you are eating something that has been through an industrial process called extrusion, in which the grain is ground, cooked under pressure, and forced through a mold at high temperature to create the flake or puff shape. This process fundamentally changes the structure of the starch in the grain. The starch,
which in its whole unprocessed form would be digested and absorbed relatively slowly, becomes gelatinized, and the starch granules become highly accessible to the digestive enzymes in the small intestine, which break them down into glucose extremely rapidly. The result is a food that, despite being labeled whole grain, has a glycemic index often between 70 and 83, higher than table sugar, which has a glycemic index of 65. When Dorothy poured that cereal into her bowl and added low-fat milk and sat down to eat her healthy breakfast, her digestive system was converting most of that cereal into glucose and delivering it to her bloodstream within 15 to 20 minutes. Her aging pancreas, with its slower first-phase response, was not ready for that speed. Her insulin-resistant muscle cells were not taking up that glucose as efficiently as they should, and her blood sugar was spiking high every single morning for 30 years. Now let us add the orange juice. A glass of orange juice is something that generations of older adults have been told is a healthy morning choice. Rich in vitamin C, good for the immune system, a natural product from fruit. But here is what a glass of orange juice actually delivers to your blood sugar. After 60, a standard 240 milliliter glass of orange juice contains approximately 26 grams of sugar, primarily fructose and glucose, in liquid form. Now, liquid sugar is processed by the body significantly faster than sugar in solid food because there is no fiber, no cell wall structure, no physical barrier to slow down the digestion and absorption of the sugar. It enters the bloodstream almost immediately, a whole orange, which contains roughly the same amount of natural sugar as a glass of orange juice. Also contains approximately 3 grams of fiber, intact cell walls, and the physical structure of whole fruit, all of which slow the absorption of the sugar and produce a much more gradual and manageable blood sugar response. When you juice the orange, you remove the fiber, you break down the cell walls, and you concentrate the sugar into a form that hits your bloodstream almost as fast as drinking a sugary soft drink. For Dorothy's aging pancreas and her insulin-resistant cells, that glass of orange juice was adding a rapid liquid sugar hit on top of the already rapid cereal glucose spike, creating a combined blood sugar surge every single morning that her body was increasingly struggling to manage. Now let us add the whole wheat toast. Whole wheat bread is another food that has been so consistently marketed as healthy that most older adults would be genuinely surprised to hear what it does to blood sugar. Whole wheat bread, despite its fiber content, has a glycemic index of approximately 71 to 74, very similar to white bread, which has a glycemic index of approximately 75. The reason is that whole wheat bread, despite containing the whole grain, has had that grain ground into a fine flour. And when grain is finely ground, the starch becomes highly accessible to digestive enzymes. The small particle size means an enormous surface area for those enzymes to work on, and rapid glucose release into the bloodstream. Follows the difference between whole wheat bread made from finely ground whole wheat flour and genuinely low glycemic grain products made from intact or coarsely ground grains is the difference between a surface area, the size of a dining table for digestive enzymes to work on, and a surface area, the size of a football field. Finely ground whole wheat flour gives the enzymes, the football field, and blood sugar rises accordingly. Dorothy was eating 3 separate high glycemic foods in a single breakfast every single morning. And she had been told by packaging, by advertising,
by general health messaging that all three were healthy choices. She had no reason to question them, and nobody in 30 years of medical appointments had ever sat down with her and explained what those three foods were doing to her blood sugar every single morning. Now, let me tell you what I told Dorothy to eat instead, because my job is not just to explain the problem, it is to give her something real to replace it with. I told her, Dorothy, I want you to change one meal, just breakfast, for the next 3 months. And I want to see you back after those 3 months. And I told her exactly what to eat. The first option I gave her
Was whole rolled oats. Not instant oats, not quick oats, whole rolled oats. Or even better, steel cut oats cooked as porridge with no added sugar. And here is why. As I described in my video on the cardiovascular patient who ate oats every morning, whole rolled oats contain beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that forms a thick gel in the digestive system. This gel slows the digestion and absorption of the starch in the oats dramatically. The glycemic index of whole rolled oats is approximately 55, compared to 70 to 83 for processed cereals. And because of the beta-glucan, the glucose is released slowly, gradually, over a longer period rather than as a rapid spike, giving her aging pancreas time to respond, and her insulin-resistant cells time to take up the glucose before it climbs too high. I also told her to add 2 specific things to her oats: ground flaxseed, which adds additional soluble fiber and slows gastric emptying further, And protein, either from Greek yogurt stirred in,
or from a boiled egg on the side. And I want to explain why the protein addition is so important. When protein is consumed at the start of a meal or alongside a carbohydrate, it stimulates an early insulin response from the pancreas. Not a full surge, but a gentle preparatory response that begins lowering blood sugar before the glucose from the carbohydrate has even arrived. It also slows gastric emptying, meaning the oat-derived glucose enters the bloodstream even more slowly than the oats alone would produce. And it triggers incretin hormones from the gut that further amplify the insulin response and further slow digestion. The combination of protein and the beta-glucan in oats creates a breakfast that Dorothy's aging blood sugar system can manage without the spike that her previous breakfast was creating every single morning. For the orange juice, I told Dorothy
to eat a whole orange instead. Not squeeze it, not drink it. Eat the whole fruit with all of its fiber, all of its cell wall structure, all of its physical complexity. That slows the absorption of the natural sugar into something gentle and gradual rather than rapid and overwhelming. The glycemic index of a whole orange is approximately 43, compared to approximately 50 for orange juice. But more importantly, the glycemic load of a whole orange, taking into account the fiber and the rate of digestion, is significantly lower than the glycemic load of a glass of orange juice, even though both contain roughly the same amount of sugar. For the toast, I told Dorothy if she wanted something to eat with her eggs, to choose sourdough bread made from a genuine long fermentation process, rather than whole wheat bread made from fine flour. Genuine sourdough bread has a significantly lower glycemic index than whole wheat bread because the lactic acid produced by the fermentation process slows starch digestion, and the structure of the bread, made from a slower process, is physically denser and more resistant to rapid enzymatic breakdown. Or even better, I told her, to replace the toast entirely with avocado. Half an avocado contains no significant sugar, provides healthy monounsaturated fat that slows gastric emptying, and provides fiber that slows any glucose absorption from the rest of the meal, and provides a range of micronutrients, including potassium,
that support blood pressure regulation. As a bonus, Dorothy came back 3 months later, and she sat down in that same chair with a different expression on her face. Not confused, not frightened. She looked like someone who understood what was happening in her body and had done something about it. Her fasting blood glucose was 101, down from 118. Her HbA1c was 5.8%, down from 6.1. Still in the pre-diabetic range,
but moving clearly in the right direction. She had changed nothing except her breakfast, just breakfast, for 3 months, and her blood sugar, that had been silently rising for years, was coming back down. She looked at me and said, "Dr. Chen, why did nobody tell me this 30 years ago?" And I did not have a good answer for that, because the honest answer is this information exists. It is in the scientific literature. It is understood by researchers and by doctors who look carefully at nutrition and metabolism. But the messaging that reaches most older adults about what is healthy for breakfast has been shaped more by food marketing than by metabolic science. And the people who pay the price for that are the Dorothys, who trusted the labels and the health claims and the advice for 30 years and ended up in my office with pre-diabetic blood sugar, not because they made bad choices, but because nobody gave them the right information to make good ones. Let me bring everything together now.
the breakfast that most seniors are eating every morning, cereal, orange juice, whole wheat toast, is a combination of 3 high glycemic foods that in a 70-year-old body with insulin resistance, slower first phase insulin response, and reduced incretin activity creates a significant blood sugar spike every single morning before the day has even begun. The cereal has been processed through extrusion that gelatinizes the starch and makes it digest almost as rapidly as pure glucose. The orange juice has had its fiber removed and its sugar concentrated into a liquid form that hits the bloodstream as fast as a soft drink. And the whole wheat toast, despite its healthy reputation, is made from finely ground flour that digests rapidly and raises blood sugar almost as fast as white bread. The alternative that I gave Dorothy, and that I give to every patient over 60 who comes to me with prediabetes or rising blood sugar, is whole rolled oats with added ground flaxseed and protein, either Greek yogurt or a boiled egg alongside, a whole orange rather than orange juice, and avocado, or genuine sourdough bread rather than whole wheat toast made from fine flour. This is not a difficult change. It does not require expensive ingredients. It does not require cooking skills. It requires understanding what your food is doing inside your aging body. Every single morning, before you have even started your day, Dorothy understood, and her blood sugar started moving in the right direction. Within 3 months, with one change, just breakfast, you can do the same. I am Dr. Daniel Chen. If this video finally explained something that has been quietly happening to your blood sugar every morning, please share it with someone over 60 who is also eating that same breakfast every morning, trusting that it is healthy and not knowing what it is doing on the inside. Subscribe to this channel for weekly videos made with genuine care for older adults who deserve real information about their own health. And leave me a comment below. Tell me what you eat for breakfast every morning. I read every single comment, and I genuinely look forward to hearing from you. Take care of yourself starting tomorrow morning.